So, welcome to our World Psoriasis Day 2022 special. This is going out live on Twitch, and you guys might be listening to it later in the day on other platforms. I'm delighted to be joined by our first guest, Chiara Lionel Salim, who is an incredible psoriasis advocate, absolute personal inspiration of mine, a fellow IFPA Ambassador, and also incredibly the founder of Psoriasis Indonesia. So, Chiara, can you hear us? Are you well?
Yes, I can hear you really well. And thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us. I don't know what time it is where you are. I hope it's not too inconvenient.
No, it's actually 3:30 p.m.
Okay,
So
that's
it's
good.
okay. It's afternoon. Yeah.
That's good. There are others today that I'm going to feel very guilty for what time they're doing this for. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I think it's only appropriate that you sort of, I know you do a lot and you're involved in an awful lot. And like I say, you're an absolute wrecking ball when it comes to psoriasis advocacy. But could you maybe, for our audience that haven't come across you, to maybe give a bit of an introduction of who you are and what you do and where you're based and everything?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Chiara Lionel Salim. I'm from Jakarta, Indonesia. I have been living with psoriasis for the past 14 years now and started to have a little bit of psoriatic arthritis back in 2015. And then since then, I have always been subconsciously advocating about psoriasis since I was a kid because my parents really want to make an environment that understands psoriasis. So everyone in school understand about psoriasis to make me more comfortable, and that it becomes kind of a habit for me to wherever I go, I will be explaining about what is psoriasis to people, just so there will be no misunderstanding or like miscommunications in when they see my flare-ups. I have I used to have really bad flare-ups until like erythrodermic psoriasis, but I have started to use biologics injections since 2017, and that's why you're seeing me currently on remission. And then what else? Yeah, since 2019, I started to actively advocating on social media on my personal Instagram account. Also, a little bit of blogging. It's more towards me pouring my heart out, basically, actually, about living with psoriasis. And also, I started the Psoriasis Indonesia. It's basically an online platform for people to learn about what is psoriasis. We're based mostly in Instagram, and then it's kind of like evolving into an online community where people all over Indonesia can come together, share their stories, find some, tips and tricks, and just basically have some support system online. So yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And yeah, we'll plug all the where you can find Chiara at the end. And for anyone listening to this back, it will be in the show notes because yeah, I highly recommend seeing her content. It's just like you're unbelievably creative, and I think that helps for getting the message across, not just for people that sort of feel alone or not very represented, but it must also help from an education point of view because I see that stuff and think, yeah, that's just a different way of portraying the reality of living with it. Do you maybe want to you talked a little bit there about blogging and as somebody who personally that turned to writing and things as a way of sort of a therapy of dealing with it. Do you want to maybe talk about how you got into that? Like, was there an event that pushed you into that route, or did you just sort of naturally find your way of sharing your experiences as a way of sort of coping helped?
I think since kids, I've always loved expressing things in words, but not exactly like through speaking. So I find it very hard for me when, especially when I'm going through a hard time, for me to voice it out. So like I would be closing myself off from people who are asking me or from my family, but like, hey, what's going on? I can't exactly get the words out. But writing helps a lot in for me to sort of describe what I'm currently feeling, what am I going through. I think it's kind of like it becomes a habit for me to self-reflect, I guess. I didn't realize that I was doing that, but then growing up now, I realized that it was actually a good habit for me to reflect on myself, to slowly kind of describe about what I feel, even though when I was younger, I don't exactly understand what I feel, but I just describe whatever it is that I know. And so it becomes kind of like an outlet. I never really intend for it to become anything else. It's just like a personal blog that I like to put it out there if there is something some kind of big reflections that I have that I want to share. And so the readers would just be my friends, the people around me, never really like put it out there or like promote it or something, especially also years back. It's not exactly a thing for us to promote in social media, right? And it just, I think, slowly evolving into something more along the way.
Yeah. And did you I don't know, this is my experience. I used to write for myself, like, and I felt it helped and helped me process what I was experiencing. And then at some point it goes from being, maybe a family member might see it, to suddenly it comes much more. And obviously you're somebody who's got a massive following, and quite deservedly so. How did you adjust to that? Was it like a gradual thing, or did it kind of happen overnight? And what were the challenges with that?
my I never really went off in my blog in terms of like the growing followers and the growing community happens mostly through Instagram. It happened when I started to share openly quite on the moment when I was experiencing the flare up itself. And it just some sort of like goes mini viral for the first time in Instagram. And then I realized that actually by me opening up more, sharing this kind of things more, it's helping a lot of people out there by just simply having feeling that they are represented, feeling that they're not alone, especially in Indonesia. There's still It's still a very taboo topic. People still consider us like, oh, I think you get black magic, that's why you get psoriasis. It's a very common misunderstanding here. And so from then on, I was like thinking, this is actually something that is impactful and that is giving me purpose, I guess. It makes like living with psoriasis, it doesn't have to be something that is just full of pain, but it can also be something that is full of purpose and full creating impacts to other people. And then so it starts from there. And also it's about the right time when I started the Psoriasis Indonesia account, where the sole purpose of it is because I realized when I was blogging and then sharing my blog on the Facebook group, a lot of people are still like having a lot of misunderstanding about psoriasis itself, even for the patients itself, because of the lack of educations and also a lot of rural areas in Indonesia where even doctors doesn't fully know about what is psoriasis. So I feel very privileged in a sense that I have parents that can afford medications. I have parents that can brought me to proper doctors that who understand about psoriasis, and so I understand what is psoriasis in a correct way. And also the fact that I'm able to speak English, meaning I can read and understand all of the informations out there on the internet. But a lot of people in Indonesia doesn't even understand English. So from that on, yeah, it's a kind of like a concern of where the realizations that, hey, I'm privileged of having all of this knowledge, and there are a lot of people out there in Indonesia especially are struggling to even just understand about their own condition. So that's why Psoriasis Indonesia started. That's where it kind of like moved me to do something about it.
Yeah, and I think you do an amazing job at sort of bridging that gap, especially you with the multilingual thing and everything. And
Yeah.
you mentioned a really well, there was 2 points there that you said that I sort of want to come back to. One was around the cultural thing, because that really shocked me when we had our sort of like recent IFPA Ambassadors meeting. There were so many stories from around the world of how, in the UK, there's still a big stigma issue with psoriasis, but people tend to be very blunt and to the point here, and it'll be like, "Oh, is it, you're not washing properly, or is that contagious, etc., etc." But what really shocked me is hearing so many like cultures around the globe mention things like the black magic and or put a religious sort of element to it, that you've done something terribly wrong. Like, is that something you sort of is? You mentioned it; it's sort of a common misconception, but is that something you sort of personally experience?
Yes. And it's something personally experienced by majority of the people in Indonesia who has psoriasis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say for somebody from a different culture, that just I find that really shocking, and it isn't just obviously Indonesia. There were so many of our colleagues obviously
Yeah.
expressing that. So yeah, I think that shows even more the mountain you sort of had to climb to to do everything that you do. So hats off to you. The other bit I wanted to mention talk about was that you said about other patients not knowing, and I think some of my harshest comments I've sort of received have come out of the blue from other patients because of like a lack of education or a misunderstanding. And I don't know, that seems to hurt more, doesn't it? It's one thing when it's your support network or a family member where sort of relationships can be a bit strained at times, but when another psoriasis patient sort of claims you're doing something wrong, it's really hard. So, how do you, with your content, how do you go about tackling that with like making sure it's in a way that people can take it without it being sort of prescriptive, or how it breaks down those barriers? Does that make sense? I feel like that's a very long question for what I was trying to
Mm.
say.
I think what I can say about it is I try to approach it in the very simple words and explanations, so it's very easy for them to understand, to go about I'm currently talking about, what I'm currently trying to approach them. But also, it's kind of like a dangerous waters in terms that I am not about to go on to show any biases. Let's say I'm using biologics, but that doesn't mean that everyone has to go on biologics. And
Yeah,
also, especially in Indonesia, it is covered by the government, but it's a very long process. It's a very limited resources. It's like basically it's very, very, very hard for you to get it covered by the government. Aside from that, you have to pay it on your out of your own pocket, or if you're lucky enough to have a company insurance, outpatient insurance, then it can help you cover for it. But even then, there's a limit towards it, so it's just probably gonna cover for like 6 injections if you're lucky. The rest you have to pay out of your pocket, and they're not cheap. So I'm very aware of that, and I'm very aware that Indonesia's most is like struggling financially, especially to pay for psoriasis, right? So it's a very kind of like dangerous waters, and I have to know that there's a lot of options out there. I cannot show any biases towards any sort of things, but I also have to at the same time speak about facts and science, in a sense that I know you guys are trying this out. Maybe there's like a certain thing that they're trying this out and it works for them, but is it backed by science yet? If it is not, then hey, I will state about it that it is not backed up by science. It's not something that is proven 100%, but there are real stories out there that this is helping. So you can try, but it's again, it's based on your own choices. So it's kind of like stating like that kind of like the challenge, see, in talking about trying to manage all of these different side views, or if someone is trying, if misunderstand about the psoriasis on itself, it's also trying to like, hey, there's this, IFPA website, or psoriasis, the national NTF from US website. It's kind of like, I have proof. Do you have proof? It's kind of like that kind of like my way to go around about it. I hope that answers this
oh
question.
yeah, brilliantly. And I think it's such an important point. And I think it's also a key reason why you've done such amazing things as you have, because you know regulars to this show will know my views on the accounts where it's just about showing one side and the thriving with, or or you get the opposite to that, which might be quite triggering for people. And I think it's so important to show both sides of it, but also to get those realities so that people don't feel like they're failing if they are struggling, but also like you say, to not have them, because I'm quite a strong opinionated person, I know that, but like I will get lots of people drop into my DMs basically saying, how do I get onto biologics? I don't want to take stuff like methotrexate or whatever anymore. And it is all formed because of social media. Yes, all drugs have their downsides and side effects and everything else, but so many people form their opinion on what is good because of what they've seen on Instagram and everything, and that can be really dangerous if there aren't people like yourself going out there and backing it up with facts and references and citing medical work and this sort of thing. So yeah, we need more of that. So thank you for doing that, because it can be a very filtered view, if not, can't it, of how people live with Arctic.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work. Let's say just to make one post, there's a lot of
Yeah, I can
research
imagine.
papers and books that you have to read first. But then it's necessary for you to be able to put out the correct informations out there.
But it shows, genuinely, it shows. I know nobody sees what goes on behind the scenes; they just see the thing you post. But trust me, for those that are also trying to make a difference, you can see it, and people gravitate towards what you're doing naturally because of that. Whether they know it's because of the work you're putting in the background or not, they see the end product. So yeah, keep doing what you're doing with that. I suppose since we're both sitting here with our IFPA t-shirts on, it feels appropriate that we should probably talk a little bit about that. So you and I are both IFPA ambassadors, and obviously it's a great program. For anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's about basically having people from around the globe to campaign, advocate for change in their regional areas, with that understanding, local knowledge, and everything else. But I think we're now a year into the program, and we're now getting to that point where we're now starting to work together, which feels really powerful. I suppose, firstly, what attracted you to the ambassador program, and what difference has it made to the way you go about advocating?
What attracted me in the first place was simply that this is an opportunity for me to learn more in order for me to be able to create more impacts in Indonesia. Because there's still lots to be done, and this is an opportunity to network, to know more people, to learn in the same industry, in the same area that I putting myself to work on in Indonesia. So just as simple as that, and I was like, okay, great. I have to apply and I have to get this. And so it has been an amazing journey, especially when we went to Italy to meet each other, one another. It was, how do you say it? It's like a very collective, positive, empowering energy all around you for like 3 days straight. It was amazing
It
and very
was.
like, yeah,
I had a proper
it
crash
was
from
very
that.
mind.
I Sorry to interrupt. I was going to say I had a proper low mood crash off the back of it. So I stayed on that trip like many of us did.
Yeah.
Some people went sightseeing and everything else. I came away from our ambassador workshop, moved on to my next hotel in the center of Italy, Milan, and I don't know. I felt so low and alone, and I think it's just because it had been 2 or 3 days of so many people with the shared views and ambitions and goals. It felt really special, didn't
Yes, especially like I got psoriasis when I was just 8 years old, and for the first 10 years, I lived like in a victim mindset. I felt so alone. I couldn't do anything. I didn't dare to like want anything because I was just busily living in pain and feeling like, oh, I have psoriasis, so I couldn't do this and that. I feel like it's very much stopped me from living my life. And so experiencing that, being in all the way across the world in Italy, being able to meet all of you, there's all of like people, change makers. It was very like, hey, a moment of silence in terms of like realizations that I'm no longer that little Kiara that was living in pain. I'm still living with psoriasis. It is still painful when it's flaring up, but at the same time, it's no longer something that has to stop me from living my life. It's something that even able to give me meaning towards my life. So it has been really amazing and learning a lot of things really about like how are we able to move this better, work on this better moving forward, how are we able to create more change moving forward. It was very eye-opening, and also the realization that there is indeed a lot that needs to
it?
be done.
Yeah, there was definitely that feeling as well. I remember feeling there was a couple of evenings where I just felt a little bit overwhelmed because it's just like my head was full of ideas, but also it felt like the list of things we had to address was getting longer. And so yeah, it was very much mixed emotions.
Yeah, it was very empowering. Wow, oh, you can do this, you can do that. Doing this kind of thing is possible, but then at the same time, oh my God, there's still a lot to do. There's still a lot that I want to do, but then also like we have limited times, we have limited resources, but then we learn to do it one day at a time and take one stride forward at a time. So yeah.
It definitely helped with understanding what the priorities are because I remember sitting in the hotel room one night and I was writing down all the stuff I do, thinking, right, what can I drop? Because I've now got about 8 new things on it, and I was like, do I stop doing the podcast? Do I just get off Instagram? And then you give yourself a bit of time to process it, and you think, oh, okay, I can tackle it in this way and that way. So I think that's what was really special, and I think that's why we probably need to do more of that. So I suppose my message for anyone listening to this back or watching it live is like, if you're interested in advocacy and and getting involved. It might not be psoriasis, it might be something else, and it might not even be health related. Put yourself in a room with other people, because I think after the last few years with COVID and everything, I didn't realize how much that held me back from what I was capable of, just because I hadn't been in that shared space, sharing that energy and ideas and other people's passion for it. Yeah, it was a
Definitely.
special couple of days. And yeah, and for anyone watching this live, guys, we've got more people coming up from the ambassador program throughout the day, so you will be hearing more experiences about that. One other thing I want to ask you about, and please, if it's not relevant to really psoriasis and World Psoriasis Day, but I think it's really important because many of us live with comorbidities and other conditions and things that maybe isn't talked about enough. And I talk a lot about my cardiovascular issues that for a lot of years I didn't realize were linked to my psoriatic disease. You obviously had a hell of a time with, I think is it transverse myelitis? Have I got that right? Are,
Yes.
are you okay to talk about that? Is that something you don't
Yeah,
mind?
yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Because following that and knowing you, and caring about how you're getting on and your well-being, that was really hard to sort of follow. But I think it was so amazing that you shared that and all the steps involved. Do you want to maybe just explain to people, one, what the condition is and what happened to you over the last year or so?
Yeah, there's this condition that I had. Basically, I actually had it twice. It's called transverse myelitis. It's an inflammation in our spinal cord that affects the myelin shit in our nerve. So basically, it makes you paralyzed. Your nerves are no longer functioning, so it couldn't transfer signals for you to like move your legs or move your toes or feel anything, or even like it can disrupt the bowel movement and also the urination issue. And so I actually got it first when I was back in 2012. So I was around 13 years old back then. And then all the tests came back negative in terms of like what is causing this. Is it another autoimmune disease like multiple sclerosis or neuromyelitic disorder? And then also, is it another autoimmune disease like lupus, or did I get any sort of virus or bacteria, or was I just get vaccinated with something? But everything was negative. And so they concluded it as idiopathic. And then the chances for transverse myelitis to relapse is very, very low. And especially that I don't have any underlying condition at that time. So back in 2012, I was paralyzed from my tummy downwards. I couldn't feel, I couldn't move, I couldn't pee, and I couldn't poop also. Sorry for the vulgarity, but
Oh,
it
appreciate your
it has to be
candidness.
transparent. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what we do, isn't
It's yeah,
it?
it's very important. And so yeah, I was able to walk back again within a month, and I was already back in school. And so it was a challenging time, but then at the same time, okay, I got through it, and I never really think back about it. And so knowing that the chances of its relapsing is very, very small, I don't have any underlying conditions. It's been years since I got it, so we never really think about it relapsing. Then suddenly last year, September 2021, I relapsed after 9 years, and it was much worse than the first one. So I was paralyzed from my breast line downwards. It was a longer inflammation on my spinal cord from the T1 until T4. And at first I was actually like, okay, this is happening again. Okay, let's do this. If I mean, it already happened. I was already paralyzed. I couldn't move, I couldn't feel, I couldn't pee, I couldn't poop. My digestive issues was also slowed down because again all of our organs need nerves to function, right? So when the nerves is damaged, then all of your organs are also uh, getting slower, or even it can also stop in the worst case, meaning
Really.
like if my inflammation go even higher, it can affect my lungs, it can affect my heart. And if it's a very, very bad inflammation, my heart can stop, or my lung can stop. It was a possibility. But then that was actually something that I thought about when I was feeling like, okay, I'm losing control of my legs after having like this burning needle pricking pain on my upper back. It was super painful, and then like for like 3 hours. I have to bear through it. I was trying to find ways to ease my pain. Nothing works. Moving hurts, laying down hurts, anything hurts basically. So nothing helped. So I just need to like try to control my breathing. Also, I couldn't even cry because crying also hurts. So it's like I was just trying to like breathe through it, one breath at a time, one breath at a time. And
Must
then
be
I was
terrifying
feeling
though
like,
to basically have that
yeah,
slow onset of. I know it wasn't slow in the grand scheme of things, but no one was coming, and to basically
yeah,
it must feel like you're stuck in a box or something. I can't even imagine how terrifying that must be.
yeah. And then after a few hours, I felt like I was losing control of my legs. I was like, shit, this is really happening again. And then at that time, I felt like the paralyzations moved slowly upwards, and I was like thinking, shit, is this the moment I'm gonna die? Because I remember the doctor told me you were lucky that your paralyzation didn't touch your chest, because there's a possibility for your organs to stop, meaning like my heart and my lungs. I was like thinking, oh, is this it? But thank God it didn't. It stopped at my breast line. But then I also thinking back then it took me 1 month to be able to walk, even though slowly. So I was like thinking, okay, we got this. I can do 1 month. I can run again in 3 months. I know what to expect, right? Compared to the first time, I was like very clueless. We don't know. We didn't even know about what the condition is. It was like it took us several days for us to get a proper diagnosis. I even need to be flew to Singapore for me to get the proper diagnosis. And turns out that didn't happen. Everything was so much worse. Yeah, so 1/3 of the transverse myelitis patient can recover fully. Another 1/3 can partially recover. Another 1/3 don't recover at all. So it was just a gamble, because the only medication that they can give is to just get rid of the inflammation. After that, it depends on your body to recover the nerves on its own. So it was like a waiting game, and just trying to do physiotherapy as much as I can so that my muscles doesn't get smaller too much. So I need to learn how to move my legs again, trying to get the nerves to reconnect again, hoping for my nerves to get reconnect again. So it was like a tough it's been a tough year, especially the first few months, because you're just bedridden. You don't know, there's no uncertainties about, can I walk again? Can I live my life again? Am I going to be disabled for the rest of my life? And there are a lot of other symptoms about nerves, like I have really bad involuntary reflexes. My leg feels like it's constantly vibrating from the inside. So it doesn't look like it's vibrating from the outside, but inside I feel like all the time. There's a lot of like symptoms of like having like feeling a very tight corset around my abdomen all the time, so it makes it very uncomfortable. And then pain here and there, couldn't really pee. I get rid of my catheter 1 month after the onset, but then afterwards it was still a struggle until now for me to control my bladder movement. So, but yeah, the first few months was the hardest, and then afterwards it gets easier because I start to be able to live my life a little bit by bit, even though with limitation. But it's been a journey.
It's
Yeah.
and I think you're downplaying that. Like just from watching from the outside, your recovery felt like a very long time. So I cannot imagine how painfully slow. I suppose you've got that hope that
Yeah.
at that point, once things are getting better, that must help a little bit. But I can't imagine not just how that onset experience was, especially when you've had that experience, you know what's coming, but how that long and protracted that. As somebody that was as a kid in hospital and went through long periods of physio and getting out of wheelchairs, I used to be frustrated as hell. But at least I knew there was a linear journey with my improvement. I can't. Yeah, I just can't. So thank you so much for sharing that. I don't. And I think it's really important for anyone who's tuned in halfway through. I think, why are we talking about this on World Psoriasis Day? I think it's so underplayed how many of us are living with these comorbidities. You know, I've mentioned I've got cardiovascular thing. I also have lots of pins and needles and neuro stuff. And every couple of years, I have to go and get poked and prodded by neurology to make sure nothing. And they've never got to the bottom of any of that. And there's you explaining like infinitely times worse sort of equivalent of that. But then there's other people that are living with Crohn's and other people that are living with like real severe on the arthritis side. And I think, yeah, we need to make sure, like, it's why we use, isn't it, the psoriatic disease. You know, I know it's World Psoriasis Day, but I try to make myself use psoriatic disease as much as possible. But it's just more of that all encompassing, you know, inflammation is a shit and it is going to find different ways of attacking yourself, isn't it, ultimately?
Yeah. Also, I think I have to mention this to not scare other people off, especially people with psoriasis. No, it's not because of my psoriasis
Yeah.
that I got
Yeah.
transverse myelitis.
Yeah, yes, I imagine that comes up a lot. Like it's the same processes, isn't it?
Everyone freak out.
Yeah, yeah. It is when we're talking about comorbidities and stuff like that. It's the same processes. It's inflammation. It's your body attacking itself. But it's not. If you've got psoriasis, you're not going to get this and X, Y. Same as if you've got psoriasis, you're not necessarily going to get psoriatic arthritis. But yeah, the reason it is brought up today and we're talking about it is it's that same process of your a healthy body attacking itself, isn't it? Ultimately, and
Yeah.
overreacting, and it's terrifying to the levels that can do that. I also think it's important to mention as well because as somebody that lived with arthritis for a lot of years as a kid before I got psoriasis, there was like an element of me getting psoriasis that was almost a relief because it allowed me to show somebody all that stuff, all that pain I was feeling that nobody could see, and sometimes people leave, including some doctors when I was very young. It was almost like, look, here's a rash. This is what's going on. You can actually physically see it on the outside. So I think it's important that we talk about this stuff because psoriasis is very visible, and with that comes confidence issues and mental health issues and everything else. But there are also many more people living with similar conditions that people can't see, and they don't see the pain they're in. And so to have something as extreme as that, and we do appreciate guys listening, don't panic, it is an extreme example, but it helps frame processes that are going on, doesn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate that is heavy, and that was sort of like a big thing for you, but I really do appreciate it. I'm really conscious of your time, and I know there's going to probably be some questions and things for you at the end of this. I guess what's next for you as somebody that seems to just keep blowing my mind with that you just keep upping your levels every time, and just yeah, you're like psoriasis celebrity to me. And yeah, I am fanboying guys in chat before you say it. But it is true. You just keep taking things to that next level. What's next for you, especially with like the Psoriasis Indonesia stuff and things like that?
Definitely elevating forward for psoriasis Indonesia. There's a lot to be done. It's my wish for it to be able to have a strong foundation first, because right now there's still a lot of things that I am personally handling. So it would be great for me to have a stable team for to be able to do all of the usual stuff that we already have in the social media. So moving forward, I am able to focus on other things. We may or may not have an ebook about self stigma going on to be released with a lot of psychologists in Indonesia, and then trying to one day also make kind of like a road show for psoriasis to be able to. Indonesia is a very big country. There's a lot of cities, there's a lot of provinces, there's a lot of people with psoriasis in these provinces. So one of my dreams, hopefully in the next upcoming years, is to go on a road trip, a road show, to be able to meet all of these and unite them and also give proper educations, because those in rural areas are those who actually need even more work on their educations about psoriasis, autoimmune in general, because a lot of stories, even their own families doesn't believe that they're not contagious. It's that bad. So that is what we're currently working on. Of course, a lot more social media campaigns, events, but also personally, I it will be mostly online while we're working on things, because I'm moving abroad. Aside from, I believe this is something that is also important in living with this kind of chronic conditions. We tend to stop ourselves from living the dream and taking the leap of faith or taking the risk.
Yeah,
When I was paralyzed, I promised myself that if I'm able to walk again and live independent again, I'm gonna try to fight for what I really want, something that I've been wanting to do in life, which is try to live and move to Europe. All this while, I've been just like thinking about it in a sense that, okay, I'll try to find a scholarship, go over there for master's degree, but I never really thought about moving there for work. And suddenly I got the chance to move there for work. I'm actually leaving tomorrow. So it was like something,
Thank you for joining us the day before your move and continent. I really appreciate it.
yeah, so it's like, you know, chronic conditions doesn't have to stop us from living the dream. I know I have a lot of preparations needed, especially from my medical history, medical resume. I have to go back to doctors to and fro, preparing this and that for my medical preparations. But I don't want it to stop me from living, from trying to do something that I really wanted to do. So I think it's very important to have that message deliver. So aside from Psoriasis Indonesia, for me personally, I'm also moving forward to keep on living my dreams.
It's just amazing. Like I started this interview by saying how inspirational you are, and that just goes to prove it. Like with everything you've been through over the last year or two, to just keep sort of sticking a middle finger up to your conditions and pushing yourself and doing more. And with everything you've achieved so far, it'd be so easy to just rest on that. So yeah, unbelievable inspiration. I suppose on that note, because I very much look forward to following your sort of next chapter, where can people find you online? Like, you don't have to look hard, guys. Put Chiara on social media, you're going to find her. But where can people find your multiple accounts?
I'm mainly on Instagram for both Psoriasis Indonesia and for me personally. So you can find us on Instagram. Should I spell out my handles or should I type it on the Twitch?
Yeah, well,
I actually have it
if
on.
you want to say it, and then what I'll do is I'll put it in the show notes for any videos or podcasts that come off this recording. So yeah, don't worry if people get it wrong. We can put it in chat as well.
All right. So my Instagram handle is at Kiki Lionel. Is CHI Lionel. And for Psoriasis Indonesia is at psoriasis_ID. So you
Brilliant.
can follow us, my personal journey and both the Psoriasis Indonesia journey there.
Superb. Just keep being you, Chiara. It's been absolutely honoured to meet you this year for the first time in person, and also just to know you over the last year or so. It's just it's company that I never thought I'd find myself in, and you just continue to inspire not just patients but others like myself that are trying to do what we're doing. So thank you ever so much for joining us, especially the day before your massive move, and I hope that goes well.
Yeah, I have a lot of like luggage open behind the scene. Still packing. Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you.